Hello, everybody. Welcome to the continuous educational series of integrative medicine case reports. Today is the 108th day. A lot of people consider this as an auspicious day, 108th day of our continuous educational series. And none other than the most auspicious person has joined us. We are today joined by Dr. Divya Kanchibolta, who is the Executive Director of Art of Living's Sri Sri Institute of Advanced Research Center at Bengaluru, which is a part of Art of Living. And Divya is a very special person, very specially qualified to be an engineer as well as a biotechnologist. She's trained in BTech and MTech in biochemical engineering and MTech in biotechnology from IIT New Delhi. And she also has a master's degree in molecular biology, on which we work a lot, from Baylor College of Medicine at Houston. And she's worked as the senior scientist at Boston Scientific, a company which was involved in making stents, biodegradable stents. So it has a lot of implications for healthcare. Yesterday we had Dr. Arunan from Mumbai speaking about the educational models. And today we have a researcher who has moved to spirituality and not forgotten the roots into molecular biology and biochemical engineering. So she combines life sciences, healthcare research with technology, because she has a background in technology. She has an MTech, as I mentioned. She has been associated with Art of Living since 2002 and been working for the last 15 years, developing the research program at the Sri Sri Institute of Advanced Research. And so far, she has executed about 100 research projects, and she is developing more and more. Ironically, she's now in Hyderabad because of quarantine. She flew in from Australia, working on a collaborative project, thinking that she would be able to fly down to Bangalore to start what she had left with when she went to Australia. But she's still in Hyderabad. Good for her, because she's doing a lot of talks, organizing webinars, and thinking through the various research methods to take her center further up, because Art of Living has so much resources, there's branches across the country. And for a scientist, this means that more and more resources to execute research projects, and more people, since they practice Sudarshan Kriya, which is one of the innovative processes of yogic breathing, are also big sample sizes. Or if they are willing participants in a future research project. So she is willing to capitalize on that aspect of their spiritual inclination and generate data of how Sudarshan Kriya helps in advancing health in one's life. And therefore, her talk today is going to be on just that. She will be talking on mental health and the yogic breathing. So there is a connection between yogic breathing and mental health. And she will be describing that by explaining to us what research has taken place in respect of Sudarshan Kriya, which is one of the innovative yogic breathing techniques. And she's collaborating with many countries around the world, including the Indian institutes such as NIMANS, AIMS, and outside India in Singapore, UK, Australia. So we are really delighted, Dr. Divya, to have you with us. And it's a proud privilege to introduce you to our audience, which consists of healthcare workers, yoga academics, biologists, engineers. So their program is well received and viewed across IITs, All India Institute, New Delhi, and other AIMS and PGI Chandigarh, and of course across the world into MIT, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. We have subscribers from these institutions, and we have other people who are, just yoga practitioners. And this journal has a mission to publish reports from yoga studios, from Ayush interventions, as case reports, what happens, what benefits the students or the patients derive from these interventions, as single or two or three people, what they benefit, they, with the informed consent, the whatever data that comes out, we solicit that, and we solicit also from you whatever that is going to come out, we are able to publish with our big and huge editorial board. So welcome, Dr. Divya. We look forward to hearing from you, your experience and whatever is going on in the Sri Sri Institute of Advanced Research. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Akshay. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I must start by congratulating you for continuing this initiative for more than 100 days. Actually, it's a pleasure to be here on 108th day. And really for, to continue the series to help um, everybody with their mental and physical health at this time is really commendable. So great job. And for all the viewers out there, good evening, everybody. Like Dr. Akshay said, I am Divya Kanchibolta. I am the Executive Director for Sri Sri Institute for Advanced Research. I'm also the Working Director for Standing Research Committee for Indian Yoga Association. A couple of years ago when I had traveled to US and I had met Dr. Sara Lazar, she is one of the foremost scientists in brain imaging and meditation. And in fact, she's one of the first scientists who showed that with meditation, the gray matter in our brain changes. And I was talking to her and I asked her, do you find any obstacles in your research on meditation, being in an institute like Harvard? And what she responded was something very interesting. She said that the any resistance that she has faced actually comes from within the yoga community, because they feel that we know it works, then why do we need research? So techniques like Sudarshan Kriya, yoga, meditation, people already see them working in their life. So sometimes research on them is a little bit less. And that is why, SSIR was exclusively formed under the Art of Living, was to put the knowledge of this scientific knowledge of yoga, meditation, Ayurveda on a scientific pedestal. And we work on research studies that investigate the impact of these holistic techniques, not only on our mind and body complex, but also on our behavior, but more importantly on our lifestyle, more importantly on our environment, and on our society and world at large. So our research interests are quite vast, and they spread from mental physical health to peace to sustainable lifestyle. And we are currently working on more than 60 projects in multiple collaborations. But today's topic is going to focus on mental health and yogic breathing. And for the purposes of today's talk, like Dr. Anand said, I will be focusing on Sudarshan Kriya, which is the cornerstone technique of the art of living. When Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar ji founded Art of Living many years ago, almost 40 years ago, Sudarshan Kriya was the first technique that was taught in the Art of Living. And now it has been taught in more than 156 countries, with millions of people benefiting from this technique. What is Sudarshan Kriya, or SKY for short? It's a composite technique of four components. The first one is a pranayam, which is based on the Ujjayi breathing. Then the second one is Bhastrika pranayam, which is quite popular. Most people know what that is. Then there is Om. And the third one is a cyclical breathing technique of Sudarshan Kriya itself. So it's a very comprehensive yogic breathing technique. And because it has been around for 40 years, it has benefited people so much. It has been a major focus of SSIER research. And much before SSIER, actually, it has been the focus of many independent researchers from around the world, including scientists from NIMHANS, University of Oslo, so many places. It has research has taken place in Sudarshan Kriya. Today, I'm going to talk about the aspect of mental health and yogic breathing. Why is mental health important? I don't need to tell anybody in today's scenario why mental health is important. Because even before the pandemic, the WHO was reporting that mental health or poor mental health or depression will be a major cause of disease burden by 2020, the year that we are already in. And now with this pandemic, things around us are, much worse. With lockdown, bad economy, social isolation, all these things are creating poor mental health amongst most people. There's a little bit of anxiety, fear in most people. And in fact, many mental health experts are warning that after this pandemic, we are going to have a mental health pandemic. And there might be a great mental health crisis coming forward, which our existing systems might or might not be able to cope up with. I read somewhere that India has 9,000 psychiatrists for a population of 1.3 billion people. And there was a survey done by Indian Psychiatry Society that said that there has been a 20% rise in people with mental illness after the outbreak of COVID-19 in India. That means at least 1 in 5 Indians has suffered from some sort of a mental health issue during the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, this phenomenon is not just for India, it's all over the world. In US, more than half the population reported that this pandemic has impacted their mental health negatively. There was a poll by Kaiser Family Foundation, and there are multiple reports from Canada, across the world, where they're showing increased alcohol consumption, 1,000% increase in calls to hotline which measure emotional distress. So I don't need to talk about, I mean, it's very clear that this mental health crisis is global, it's real, and it will need attention too, because just a traditional system of medicine, it's already so overwhelmed, it might or might not be able to take care of it. So what is it that something else that can help with our mental health? So can breathing help? Or more specifically, can yogic breathing help? So if you look at breathing, you know, breathing is a quite of a unique act of our life. Because firstly, it is the first act of our life. When we are born, the first thing a baby does when a baby is born is taking a breath in. And the last thing we all do is taking a breath out. So during our whole life, we use our breath. But perhaps it is the most unconscious act of our life as well. Most of you, as you're listening to me, you're probably not even aware that you are breathing. Now that I bring your attention, you're like, yeah, I'm breathing. But most of the time, we use this beautiful or this powerful function of our body and mind very unconsciously. Once a pulmonologist had told me that we breathe around 10,000 times in a day. And 90% of nutrition in our body comes from actually the oxygen. So it is such an important function. But most of it is unconscious. The beauty about breath is that it can switch between a voluntary and an involuntary function, right? I mean, when it's an involuntary function, it's controlled by the respiration center in the brain, and we are not aware of it. But that respiration center in our brain makes sure that we breathe even when we are sleeping. But when we want to make it voluntary, we can. This switch between voluntary and involuntary of the breath actually has allowed yogis of the past or rishis of the past to come up with these techniques that would allow us to modulate our nervous system, modulate different functions in our body. And that is why for most of the yogic techniques, breathing, conscious breathing, different modulations of breathing has been tapped into, because it has such an impact on our nervous system, and it is one of the few critical functions of our body that we can actually control. For most of us, maybe a few people can control their heart rate, but most people cannot control our heart rate. Most people cannot control how fast we will digest our food, but we can control our breathing. The other thing about breathing is, which Sudarshan Kriya also harnesses into, is the different rhythms of breathing are associated with different emotions. Of course, we intuitively know it, but now there are research studies around it. So, research by Pierre Filippo showed that different emotional states are connected with different rhythms of breath. So, and a very most of you are researchers or healthcare workers who are listening to me. I would like to give you an experiment. Next time when you're watching a movie with somebody, observe them while they watch a movie. And you will notice that the person sitting next to you, their breathing pattern will change with what is happening on the screen. And it will be a fascinating exercise for you to watch how their breathing changes with what's happening on the screen. So the breathing and the emotions are connected. In the research study that I mentioned by Pierre Filippo, they showed that it's both ways. So for example, if we change our emotions, our breathing changes. But at the same time, if we change our breathing pattern, our emotions can also change. So many times when we have poor mental health, when we're feeling anxious or depressed or sad, just by talking, it might not help. If I tell you, don't think about that one thing that's worrying you, it usually doesn't work like that. But when we can harness into our breath through the techniques like Sudarshan Kriya, we can actually modulate our breath. So this research on Sudarshan Kriya has been, like I said, Sudarshan Kriya has been taught for more than around 40 years in 156 countries. And there are more than 100 research studies on Sudarshan Kriya. Many of them have been done by scientists independent of Art of Living in institutes ranging from NIMHANS in India to University of Oslo, to University of Pennsylvania, University of Wisconsin-Madison, different institutes around the world, more than 12 countries where research on Sudarshan Kriya has happened. Although this research, has, or what should I say, investigates multiple benefits of Sudarshan Kriya, but today I will focus on the mental health ones. So when we talk of the mental health, in fact, the first research study ever on Sudarshan Kriya was conducted in 1999 in NIMHANS by Dr. Gangadhar, actually, who is the current director of NIMHANS. At that time, he conducted the research. And what it was a study on mental health. And what they found was it was a study on depressed population where they took three arms in the study. One arm was given Sudarshan Kriya, one arm was given an antidepressant medication, and one arm was given a shock therapy, which we do not do anymore, I think. So this was people who had mild to moderate depression, and they found that people who did Sudarshan Kriya, the arm that did Sudarshan Kriya performed as well as the arm that took the antidepressant medication. And 67% of population actually was in remission even at 4 weeks of practice of Sudarshan Kriya. So like that, there are several studies on Sudarshan Kriya and depression. There's another study from University of Pennsylvania, which looked at people suffering from major depressive disorder. And this was the population that didn't respond well to antidepressants. And they found that more than half, 54% of the population who underwent SKY showed greater than 50% improvement in their symptoms. So these are the people who are not even responding to any kind of medication and they showed improvement. Similarly, Sudarshan Kriya has been shown to reduce stress and anxiety. You know, when we were growing up, I don't remember hearing the word depression so much. At least in my childhood, I didn't hear the word depression. Stress also I heard mostly when I maybe went to college a little bit. But nowadays, even if you talk to a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, they understand what stress is. They understand what anxiety is. So it has become such a global and such a part of a human experience. But not everybody has a resilience to handle stress very well. Not everybody has a resilience to, move through this anxiety and stress. So in that sense, breathing can help there as well. So Sudarshan Kriya, a lot of research has been done on stress and anxiety, where they showed that, and everybody, most of you will know that whenever we are stressed, our brain triggers a cascade of neurochemical reactions which release cortisol in our body. And cortisol is a primary stress hormone, and overexposure to it can disrupt almost all essential processes in our body, like digestion, immunity. It has been shown to disrupt immunity, which is so critical right now in today's scenario. So there have been studies that have showed that Sudarshan Kriya reduces cortisol. So in a study conducted by Tata Institute of Social Sciences, TIS and NIMHANS, which assessed the stress level of employees at a company, Larsen and Turbo, they found that with the practice of Sudarshan Kriya, in 23% reduction in cortisol happened at 3 months. So that means it's not like it's an instant effect, but the reduction in cortisol effect lasted for 3 months. And with 6 months, the cortisol levels had gone down by 37%. So that doesn't mean that also an instant effect and it will go away. It means that it has a long-lasting effect on our physiology, on our mental health. Employees also reported higher levels of life satisfaction and emotional regulation. Another study conducted at Department of Neuroscience in a hospital in Italy found that people who have generalized anxiety disorder, which is a condition where you have repetitive worry and exaggerated anxiety, they saw that within 2 weeks of Sudarshan Kriya, anxiety scores dropped by 48% in the population, just in 2 weeks. And most of us now, we are in the pandemic, everybody's saying that the alcohol consumption and the addiction levels are going up because people were locked down in their houses for so long. The stress levels are high, people are losing jobs. Another study at NIMHANS has shown that people who are recovering from alcohol dependence, for them stress is a big trigger for relapse. So it has shown that Sudarshan Kriya has reduced cortisol levels by 56% in 2 weeks by in the population that was recovering from alcohol dependence. Now, this is very important because in the process of a recovery from addiction, if we can manage a person's stress and improve their mental health, it helps them come out of it easily. These are the studies that have happened on stressed population or depressed population. But in general, people also, Sudarshan Kriya has give a lot of studies that talk about mental health and mental well-being. Let's talk a little bit about the pandemic in the current scenario that we are. We in SSIR ran a survey during the lockdown where we had respondents, more than 1,000 people responded to our survey, where we asked them about their mental health and we asked them if they practice any form of yoga or Sudarshan Kriya. We got most of our respondents were from two groups, one group that practiced Sudarshan Kriya and one group that didn't practice any yoga techniques. And we found that people who practice Sudarshan Kriya, they reported significantly better they reported significantly better mental health. And we also found that they reported more positive emotions than those who were not practicing yoga. So basically, in this time where everybody is impacted by a very unusual situation that is impacting everybody almost evenly, people who practice Sudarshan Kriya are able to manage it better. Similarly, a study on healthcare providers, it's a pilot study that we have just gotten the results back actually yesterday. In a pilot study on healthcare professionals, as Art of Living has been giving a lot of online programs for healthcare professionals, in which Sudarshan Kriya is a part of it, we found that within just a few days, in 4 days, we found that the healthcare professionals who underwent Sudarshan Kriya, we measured around 80 people's responses. We found that the stress levels reduced by 45%, 79% decrease in depression, and the resilience went up by 25%. We also measured their sleep, and we found that the global score for sleep, which indicates your sleep quality, actually went actually showed a significant improvement in the scores of sleep. So just in a span of 4 days, we found that the doctors who underwent Sudarshan Kriya had much less stress levels, less depression levels, and higher resilience. This is the current scenario, but what about happiness? Can Sudarshan Kriya actually make you more happy? We also found that this research study was done in Singapore, on Singapore population. This was done last year, where we took a cohort of people who practice Sudarshan Kriya and compared them to population in Singapore who doesn't practice any yoga practices or doesn't meditate. And we found that people who practice Sudarshan Kriya, the regular practice is correlated much, much strongly with being happy compared to the population. So if you practice Sudarshan Kriya, you're actually happier. And the good news is that we found that even for married people, that's true. Many times people think, oh, once we are married, our happiness will go down. In fact, there are research studies out from US that say that after 3 years of marriage, basically you're actually unhappy and not so happy anymore, etc. But here we show that people who are married and practice Sudarshan Kriya, they are much happier than their counterparts who are not who are married but don't practice Sudarshan Kriya. So like that, there are multiple research studies that talk about different aspects of Sudarshan Kriya, and two things I would like to mention, just 2 or 3 more points, Dr. Akshay. I know we are above time, but 2 3 more points. One study that is coming out of Yale University that I would like to mention, which is about to be published by the middle of this year, where this was done in students of Yale University, which is actually one of the most stressed out university campuses in the world, where they compared Sudarshan Kriya to mindfulness practices and to emotional intelligence training. And they found that out of 21 parameters they measured, Sudarshan Kriya outperformed both emotional intelligence training and the mindfulness training on all 21 of them. So there is a lot of research emerging on how breathing can actually help with mental health. And not only for people like you and I, who are regular people, but even for people who are surrendered militants or prisoners. There are research studies that show that surrendered alpha militants, we have research studies that show that when surrendered militants underwent Sudarshan Kriya, they showed enormous increase in life satisfaction, increase in quality of life, and reduction in hostility. So no matter where you are, whether you are a child or a young person, no matter if you're in a corporate environment or a doctor or a student, yogic breathing can actually help improve mental health. So, and it doesn't take anything, you're breathing anyways right now as well. It's just a little bit of attention and learning a few modulations of breath that can help.
Thank you, Dr. Divya, for explaining the various research studies and doing so in a manner that was not so technical. I think I'm sure the viewers like that. Otherwise, people used very technical terms, and so they get confused at times. Although our audience is pretty educated, although there are those which are not technically from the technical background. And the good thing is that, as she explained, the Sudarshan Kriya is so popular, as she mentioned, as you must have noticed. Other institutes have been taking it up, like NEMANS, she mentioned, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, she mentioned, a study in Oslo, and people in Singapore have researched on Sudarshan Kriya. And I think Dr. Divya is beginning to feel that and more studies she wants to bring into her campus now, because the others have taken lead just due to its sheer popularity. And there are also some viewers. This was not really planned, but would you mind taking a few questions from the Facebook? So there's a question from Geetha Srinivasan asking, Madam, can people with hypertension and palpitation do Sudarshan Kriya?
Yes, absolutely. In
Also,
fact, there is
although
a research study
although,
that shows
yeah,
that it helps with hypertension. They can do it, yeah.
they can
Just
do it.
you should. The only thing we ask you is that you mention it. Anyways, we check for everybody's health condition before they come in the program. Just mention it to your trainer as well.
Correct. So supervision is very important. In fact,
Supervision is important.
and one of the viewers, Vishwanath Rao, himself answered, yes, definitely, but we wanted to hear from you. So, one Rohini Anant asked, thanks much for such research information. Has there been any attempt in introducing these in schools or colleges so we can have a generation handling stress and negative emotions? Very good and relevant question from Rohini Anant.
Yeah,
So
it's
anything
a
happening? You mentioned prisoners, you mentioned war, criminals and people who had surrendered. How about kids? Have you been doing
yes.
anything with the kids?
Yeah, so Sudarshan Kriya, children we start as young as 8. So children who are 8 to 13, they have their own version of Sudarshan Kriya, and there are thousands and thousands of them who have done it. I would say maybe lakhs of them, not thousands. So Sudarshan Kriya, and then there's a program for teenagers between 13 and 18, and then 18 to 35. It's there in colleges as well. In fact, I would say that we must have taught maybe 10 lakh students in colleges around India and around the world actually. So Sudarshan Kriya is an accredited course in universities like Stanford, MIT. You can actually do this course for credit. And we have a partnership with AICTE in India, through which a lot of courses are being offered as well. So definitely it is being offered to children and college students as well.
Great. And you started, Dr. Divya, saying that a lot of people say, what is the need for research? Because this itself is so joyful and gives a good experience. Our platform looks at it as an important, element of integration in health, because if it is giving so much of, it's so useful for stress reduction, anxiety, coping with the anxiety, then why shouldn't you, under your leadership, develop Sky protocols for anxiety, Sky protocol for depression, Sky protocol for whatever that you are claiming for, prisoners, and those could be even integrated in an evidence-based fashion, which is also endorsed here by one of the viewers. I'll just read it. Archana Prasad saying that it's very good that we have statistics about the researchers about Sudarshan Kriya. Now we can talk with facts. So she's endorsing what you mentioned. For my yoga scholars, there's a question how it will be useful for anxiety. You touched on that, but do you want to elaborate?
How will it be useful for anxiety? Yeah,
Yeah,
I touched a little bit on that on a few research studies, but lot of people who have done this program come and share how they worry less. You know, research has shown that anxiety and worry are quite connected. And of course, repetitive thinking again and again creates anxiety as well. It's a sign of anxiety, or correlated rather. So, and it has shown that, research shows that meditation actually reduces mind wandering, which is also correlated with anxiety. So, on a practical level, Sudarshan Kriya definitely helps with anxiety. You will see a big change, and that too almost instantaneously. But at a research level, also, we have shown through a few research studies that it helps a lot with anxiety. And even with people who are not able to find help in traditional methods, it can still help them. Traditional, I mean Western medication.
The regular conventional medicine. So this can act as an
That's not
adjunct.
traditional.
No, true, true. We got the point that regular conventional medicine, and that's what is the integrated healthcare. So Sudarshan Kriya can act as adjunct to the
Absolutely.
conventional
Absolutely.
medicine.
Absolutely.
When you talk of kids, and we are taking this conversation just 2 or 3 minutes far into thinking and assuming that the viewers will benefit from our interaction and conversation
I'm sure they will.
as I take questions. Aspect, the educational, the educational research is also an underdeveloped area. Maybe the Sri Sri Institute of Advanced Research can even go into the area of educational research, where a group of kids of certain age undergo Sudarshan Kriya or a modified version, which is allowed or prescribed for them, versus another group which is not, exposed to Sudarshan Kriya. And then we may compare them, hooking them with HRVs and EEGs. So this is a research being done in at least Australia and some of the countries such as Europe and US. But India, it is pretty underdeveloped area, which you might consider taking up as your center's focus.
We have done one study, actually, Dr. Akshay. We have done one study where we have compared mental well-being and cognitive performance of children. So Out of Living also runs schools. So we have more than 95 institutions under a trust called SSRBM, where their children practice Sudarshan Kriya every day. So we have run a study where we have compared their cognitive function and their mental well-being, and it is quite different from a child in a controlled school in the same city. So we found that children were more relaxed when they practice Sudarshan Kriya every day, plus their cognitive functions were better.
Very
But
nice.
we haven't done HRE and EEG. That is something probably we can take the next.
Yeah. So yeah, there are like labs with full classrooms with gadgets, and the whole
Yeah.
day they study and
We're
also do
developing
Kriya.
that right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very good. So we have one Rita Isaac saying, yesterday only I finished a short course of Sudarshan Kriya from Art of Living, and it was really beneficial in many aspects. Thank you, ma'am. So that's a comment for you. So we really enjoyed. It was a proud privilege to have you on our platform. I'm sure the viewers had a good menu of different research that you've been doing, and you bring in a lot of qualifications from both engineering, technology, and research background. So we thank you on behalf of the Integrative Medicine Case Reports, and we hope to reconnect again, and maybe once again, maybe on the 200th day of our continuous education series, we are able to
Thank
invite
you,
you. It was
Akshay.
the
This was a
108th day.
pleasure. This was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.